Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. Today's interview is brought to you by the Kulkarni Law Firm and is going to be about site adoption and what it takes, how difficult it is, and what are things you should care about. So if you are a site, you probably want to listen to this because we're going to talk about how to address the questions you have about working with technology vendors. If you are a CRO or if you are a sponsor, you probably care about today's conversation as well because of the exact same thing. You want to care about making sure that the technology that you are leveraging, that you are enabling, is actually working with what your sites are looking for. Our guest today is a friend of mine. I've known her for over 10 years, over a decade at this point. She has over 20 years of experience in the clinical research industry and is passionate about the sites where she spent the majority of her career. She's expanded her reach and focused into technology, especially in the vendor side of the industry. And our guest for today, Deena Bernstein. Hey, Deena, how are you?
Hey, Darshan. I'm doing great. Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Well, it's so exciting to have you because we spoke to you early on in Darshan Talks, and we've now come into this new version, if you will. So it's really exciting, and we get to talk to you about so many of those changes, and specifically about adoption of technology in clinical research. I've been sort of following Brett, some of these conversations on LinkedIn, and they talk about how technology is difficult to use. It's like sponsors sort of just activate technology thinking it's going to be the solution. And what you find instead is that it's sort of not addressing the site's needs. It's really just addressing whatever the technology vendor thought would be the answer. So talk to me a little bit about what is your feedback? What was your experience when you worked at sites?
Yeah. So, what would happen is, you're introduced to a study and you go through the whole startup process. You have your SIV, and towards the end, when you're right about to get approval and get the green light to start enrolling, there's a lot of information coming from all different directions to the site about all those technology vendors that were selected for your study. So, getting your team on board from the site's perspective to get all the right people trained and everything documented and assuring that everyone knows what's going on can be, voluminous. It's a lot of work. You always have to make sure that there's a backup person that's trained as well. But you're trained typically very early on, and you may not even use some of these devices or technology until you enroll your first patient, which hopefully is very short after SIV. But reality is that that's not always the case, right? Especially in a study that's very hard to enroll in. So when you need that technology, you may not always know how to just pick it up and go. So it requires potentially a lot of backtracking. Where was that housed? What's my password? What do I do? So that's kind of what it looks like. Probably more on steroids, depending upon the amount of studies that a site is working on, from a site's perspective of using technology or any type of DCT modality in a clinical trial.
So let's start from the beginning. So is the issue primarily that sponsors are overeager? Do you see the issue as, oh, it's the FDA regs that require that all this happen? Is the issue the fact that the technology is intended to be easy to use, but it's really never ever that easy to use? Like, what do you see as the reason this is all happening?
I just think the amount of technology is really the issue. I don't think the FDA is imposing anything that's so taxing on the site. There are regulations that you need to follow, but I don't think that that's the difficult part. I think the difficult part is that there's so much and so many moving parts to one clinical trial. And then again, if you're a site that has multiple studies going on, it's times however many studies you're doing. So it could be maybe 27 passwords for one study, but imagine if you were doing in a large, cancer institution that you had over 100 protocols open. And that's a reality.
So Jeffrey has a question or comment.
It is so nice to see you. What's my password is the bane of my existence. Yes, Jeff, the struggle is real. You know it well, right?
So what is the solution to what's my password? How do you, and I mean, we know that you now have ways of setting up so that there's a single unified password for all this technology that you're going to deploy for a company. But is there such a solution? Are technology vendors working with other technology vendors to enable single password sign-on so that you don't have to worry about these types of issues?
Well, I think that a lot of vendors, are working together to integrate different technology solutions. But are they working together to, adhere to one password? I mean, maybe sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I can't speak for everyone out there. But like you said, you were referring to, some sort of solution to remember your password, maybe like FastPass. Love FastPass.
There you go, Jeff. I hate to break it to you, but our solution right now is FastPass. That's where we're going.
Get it. Don't live without it.
We
don't want to see any stickies on your computer with 15 different passwords.
But let's ask this question. So we start off with this idea that we're going to work with sites. We're going to make sites' lives easier. Talk to me a little bit about what it is that Datacube does. And we'll kind of then work our way into some of the questions I had.
Yeah, so Datacubed is a very unique organization. We have all the different decentralized solutions, but I'm on it. He's so funny. Sorry. So we have, with intention, we're designed with behavioral science. So what does that really mean? That means that, let's go back to our founder, Paul Glimcher, who is a behavioral economist, world-renowned, who developed Datacubed. And all of our products, services are designed with intention, with behavioral science in our backbone. So we know how people make decisions. And our platform is very intuitive, but also gives participants an idea using our ePro, what they can expect next. And as they start to complete different tasks within their clinical trial journey and very protocol specific, they're getting rewards. So gems, in the shape of gems, they can design avatars in the likeness of themselves. And through that, it's called identity lock. And they're able to feel that engagement because they're a real participant in the study, but their avatar is going through the process. They're achieving certain milestones and goals within their clinical trial and getting gems as rewards where they can buy different things with their rewards, such as accessories for their avatar. So they keep coming back to it. And we have studies that show, you might think something like this might be very juvenile, but we have studies that show that the people that spend the most time in our app are those that are 55 and over. I mean, kids love it. Everybody loves it. And it's just really easy to use. It's pleasant. It's fun. I remember going back to my days of operating clinical research sites and putting these devices in the hands of patients. And they were clunky, they were big, they were boring. There was nothing there that motivated them to come back. So Datacubed has those motivators built in, such as confetti. And even the rate that the confetti falls is thoughtful and increases the dopamine of the participant. So they're feeling really good about their whole clinical trial experience.
So it's interesting you talk about behavioral science, because that's the big thing. And I've interviewed several people who work in the behavioral science industry, and obviously I was general counsel, chief compliance officer for a company that was in this space. So there is such buzz about the use of behavioral science in tech. It starts by having the right intention, and behavioral science gone wrong is Facebook, because you get those dopamine hits and you never want to leave because you want to just stay on the app and you want to talk to your friends and blah, 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 blah. My question for you is the goal of Datacube to have people stay on the app, or is the goal of Datacube to get off quickly and go back to doing whatever your regular life should be?
Well, the goal is the study goal. So if the study requires you to stay on the app to complete a certain task, that's how we would expect, a response of a participant to complete what is expected in that trial. So we can collect the most data, and if there's certain scales that are being rated on your phone, making it so much easier than having to go into a site location, worry about transportation, getting there, taking off from work. That's kind of the beauty of any type of ePro or scales that you're, tests that you're having to do for a trial, but being able to do it in the convenience of your own home, having that optionality of whether you want to go into an office or do it at home is really a pleasure. But the idea isn't to be a time robber and keep you on there all day like Facebook might.
Right. So it starts with the right intentionality to do it with the intent to make sure you get the right dopamine hits, if you will. So that goes back to the question we started off with, which is, how do you keep people and make them do the right thing so that, for example, all the data is entered and make sure, for example, that they can get paid at the end of finishing the data that needs to be entered, so that they know that all the data you wanted entered is in there now and you can move on with the rest of your life. So I guess my question for you is, does this gamification, if you will, because that's really what it is, it's a type of gamification, adding these gems or whatever it is, does that, you mentioned that 55-year-olds, for example, and higher or older are big users of the system. If you haven't used that system for, say, I don't know, 6 months from when you were trained, is that gap very difficult, very confusing, because they haven't used it and it's slightly more complicated because it's got all these gamification elements in there? How do you address that time, that lag, if you will?
Are you talking about for the sponsor or for the participant?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about from the perspective of the site. So the site is using it, I don't know whether you're talking about ePro type systems or we're talking about the site entering its own data. But either way, my thought process was, you teach people 6 months early. You say, the next patient who comes in, they can start using it. You can start using it at that point. And then you've got that gap of 6 months before you actually start using it. And now you've forgotten what that system actually looks like, what that system feels like. And this system especially has these additional components. Does that make things more confusing?
Well, I would say that our components, everything is very intuitive and easy to use. Let's just say that. Very simple. You can sign up if you're a participant within 30 seconds. But the site has a little bit more responsibility. They also have access to, seeing how many of their participants actually use the app, if they missed something, if they missed a diary entry. So I guess it's just initially getting started. And then once your first participant starts, you're constantly working in the system to see, all very study specific, how many times the study's requiring you to come back to the app. But there's a lot of reminders built in. So once you're in, you're signed up, it shouldn't be difficult for anybody to use. Just super simple, giving you the information and the insights that the site might need as far as the data of what's being collected, all that important safety data, and sending out reminders to both the site and the participant if something's missed.
So you're using the use of reminders, for example, and messaging potential subjects and telling them that, we need this bit of data, have you put in this information, all of which are useful sort of nudges to help people come back and make the decisions that they need to make so that we can have the appropriate information. We mentioned Facebook a little while ago, and we talked about how they really, quite honestly, butchered that process, and hopefully they're fixing that and all those good things. But on the other hand, someone like Apple is now in the clinical trial space. I haven't seen as much nudging with something like their clinical trials platform. So I guess my question for you is, do you feel, as you talk to sponsors, as you talk to CROs, that the clinical trials industry is working in spurts? Some parts of it are moving forward, some parts of it are not. And what has the feedback been from CROs and sponsors?
Well, the feedback we get is very positive. We hear, the sponsors work with us to create their patient journey in the app. So it's not only ePro that they might have, but they also might have patient engagement, which is those gentle nudges. But they come in the form of information, announcements. It could be, if you're doing a breast cancer study, it could be something about mindfulness and just, how to calm yourself down if you're feeling anxious, or just good, healthy dietary recommendations and constant, just kind of reminders about good health and, what you should be thinking about. If maybe your family wants to help you and you're the type of person that says, no, I don't need help. Just how to say yes to someone offering you assistance. Nice reminders that just kind of make you feel good and continue that engagement until that next specific task in that study protocol.
So again, what it sounds like is this way to keep the subject interested and invested in the system, so that they can keep coming back, and so that they have a holistic experience as being part of the study, which is great. Is there any movement? I'm not talking about Datacube right now. I'm talking about in general. Have you heard about any movement in coming back to these patients? Because you spend a lot of time building this community. Is there any movement in keeping those communities after the study has completed, and sort of enabling them to continue engaging with each other? Or do we as a industry sort of abandon patients afterwards? And what has been your take on that?
So that's interesting. I don't think that really anybody brings all sponsors together. I mean, that brings any sponsor or CRO brings any participant together as a group, because there's danger there, right? There's danger.
What kind of danger?
The danger could be there's risk. There's risk that participants could start talking to each other about things that you wouldn't want them to talk about to each other, that could perhaps unblind or make someone think they're on a placebo or, the active drug, and, potentially drop out, or, think that they're on something they're not, an active ingredient. So there's danger in having, this is industry talk, and having community. But patients really do want community because they want to be able to share their experience. I really haven't seen a specific platform that allows for that in the DCT space, built into what we do with ePro and patient engagement. It's more one-on-one engagement with, you and the study you're on. As far as abandoning patients, that's something that I wouldn't really speak to it in those terms, but what we hear and always have heard, and I'm sure that you, Jeff, all of us that have been in the rooms at different conferences, is the patients just want to be thanked. They want to be appreciated. They want to know what happened to the study, from the results of the study that they participated in, and just completely, follow that feedback loop to the very end.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them feel good. That's what they want to know, that if I'm going to devote my time to participate in a trial, I just want to know what happened.
Right.
Did the drug come to market? Is it helping people? Is it helping people like me? Is it helping future, generations of people with a certain disease? And that is a motivator for just participation. So I think the industry as a whole still has some work to go in that area, but we're still talking about it. And I see from time to time sponsors, making that effort to close that gap and, end that feedback loop at the end of the trial participation. I think that also motivates people to come back and participate again.
Exactly. And it's funny, I do a bit of work in the clinical trial transparency space. And there's a space called Article 70 and Article 43 from the EMA. And they have these requirements now. And these requirements which is very interesting to a lot of people.
Love that.
And it's not evident. And EMA itself has been going through a lot of upheaval because of Brexit, and they moved to Amsterdam. And as a result of that, what you landed up with was a scenario where a lot of the initiatives they had simply didn't get pulled together the way they wanted them to. But transparency is a core goal of theirs. And the reason that I talk about transparency is there's something called the patient lay summary. Have you heard about this?
The patient what?
Patient lay summary.
No.
And essentially what it is at the end of the study, they want the results to be disclosed, and B, if you're going to publish something within a year, I believe, you have to publish a lay summary version of what happened with the study.
And where is it posted?
Access it. It's actually on the EMA website.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But
hopefully sponsors are seeing that and they're going to build that into, whatever technology that they're using, or, close that loop and give participants what they want to hear. And if there's already, some sort of mandate in place, I think we need to socialize that a little bit more.
And I think that's really where that goal is, right? Closing that loop. Because one of the things sponsors struggle with when I talk to sponsors is this idea of, well, I don't know where the patients are. I can't give people, I'd love to give these patients or these subjects the trial results, but I don't know who they are. And I don't know if the site will do that. And one of the things this enables, and technology enables, is you can give anonymized information back because you don't know who the patients are, but they can get the data because they're logged into the system using these ePro systems.
Yeah. So, there are ways to do it. Obviously, the sponsors cannot speak directly to the participants, but they can, keep that feedback loop to the sites who chances are still, have a relationship with a participant, know how to find them through maybe an email address or a phone number that you could text information or provide it. Just leave the app open for, end results and ping the participant at the end and say, hey, there's this study that you were participating in 2 years ago or however long, that drug has gone to market and it's got FDA approval, and, look for it and, thank you for participating. So there are definite ways to do that. And I think about that very often. And I hope that our sponsors are building that into their study plans as well.
So let's talk a little bit about your unique role, which is again, we've been talking a lot about site initiation and site activation, and how do you enable the technology to enable patients, enable sites to go to market quickly and sort of understand. Well, I use go to market, really start the trial quickly is really what I mean. But you have the unique pleasure of talking to sponsors and having that perspective of being a site. What are some of the unique things you've learned in that experience to go from defending sites as a site owner, if you will, for lack of a better term, to you? I mean, you were technically part of an SMO, but still, from being a site owner to now hearing the sponsor side. And what have you learned in that sort of changeover, if you will?
Yeah, it's been a great experience, probably a new highlight to my long career. But being on this side of the house has really opened my eyes to see what happens before, a device or any type of decentralized technology gets into the hands of the sites and then the patients. So my role is VP of Customer Success. And I have the pleasure of being the ambassador to happiness, is what I like to say.
Oh, I love it.
Anybody that knows me, that's probably the perfect job for me, right? You know me, and I like to bring the sunshine wherever I go. So I get
including outside your own window right now.
Yep. Follows the sun. So anyway, in my role, I get to talk to sponsors. I get to talk to CROs that are our clients. I get to do a lot of listening and hearing what their challenges are. But as you said, for the sites and my experience, the site blood runs through my veins. So I always think, well, how are the sites going to react to something like this, and bring that expertise to the table, and kind of, bring something that's thought provoking from the site side back to sponsors and CROs. But now that I know the challenges that sponsors and CROs have, also incorporate that in the types of training and the types of offering that we bring to the sites. For example, some of the things that we hear about is that the sponsors are very concerned about participants that might not have devices or might not have internet access, depending upon where in the world they are. So being able to offer provisioning globally, never thought about that before, but there's a lot involved. There's a lot involved in having a device move from one depot into certain countries and that sort of thing. But having that device, once it is delivered, ready to go. So once a site receives it, they, can have a configured device ready to hand a patient to participate. So never thought about that before being on the site side or how it got there. So I really, learned a lot about that. And then being there to support the sites. So how do you do that? You can do that through training, on-demand training, through e-learning modules, from attending investigator meetings, speaking directly to sites, and knowing that the sites hold the key to the success of, being able to engage with the participant to use the device, or giving them the option on using that device or that platform for the trial. Also, again, back to support. In my role, our support team reports to me. So having a model, we call it follow the sun support. So we can be across the globe anytime, 365 days a year, 24/7, and be able to answer questions if a site or a participant has, questions or they get stuck, and quickly resolve their, whatever it might be that they're having trouble with.
So the two takeaways, if I hear you correctly, the first takeaway is being available to sites 24/7 is so that there is at the point of care, at the point of need, there is an answer, as opposed to, 6 months ago we gave you some training, I hope you remember it because that's what you're going to need. You're providing this follow the sun support, if you will, for lack of a better term. And alternatively, it is also understanding from the site's perspective how a sponsor is thinking, which is some of the things that you as a site may take for granted. Things like everyone has technology. I have technology, so it should be okay. You're going, that's not how the sponsor is thinking. The sponsor is going, I need to make sure the technology is in everyone's hands and that technology can be enabled. And that was kind of illuminating, if you will.
Oh, good.
So I just want to make sure I got that right. So yeah. Do you get to take feedback to your actual, like, do you ever get a chance to sort of talk to sites in general from your own experiences and tell Datacube, here's what I would have done, here's what I would have known, or talk to sponsors and go, here's what our clients are saying, and how does that influence the actual changes that are being made?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it because we didn't talk about that previously. But we have a site advisory board as well as a participant community partner group. So not only what I say, what Deena Bernstein says based on her experience of developing sites for 20-something years, but the sites, the best and the brightest sites are on our boards. And we speak with them regularly. Not only do we speak with them, we survey them. We give them the opportunity to participate in focus groups of, how do you like this versus how do you like this? Or, if we were to develop a new product, which would be most meaningful to you? What would you like to see? That sort of thing. And our teams, our design teams, our product teams, they thrive on all the information that we get back from sites, from participants. And, just having that opportunity to interview participants, because everybody's different and unique. Every study's different. Every site is different. You get so much, variable information back. So you can really focus on developing the best possible products for, supporting clinical trials. But not just listening It's about doing, right?
Right.
A lot of people listen and have these types of, advocacy groups, but what are you really doing based on what you're hearing? And like I said, all of our information is shared back with our teams, and our teams are just like so thirsty to get that information and feedback. And, they think in development about, everything, all the different feedback that we got. Like, obviously we can't do everything, but we do put things, immediately into, product review or feature requests, and future feature requests. But one of the things that our clients, who are the sponsors and the CROs, say to me all the time, which just is just so nice to hear, is that not only do you listen, but we see results. So you might give us an idea about something in the future that you'd like to see, and then it actually comes to fruition. And imagine from a customer service perspective, that if you were to call Amazon and say, hey, you delivered this Aura ring that I just got, which, oh my gosh, I'm totally in love with my new little best friend here that tracks my sleep and everything. I'm obsessed. But anyway, what if I said to Aura, I think I'd really like not to have to set a workout, that it automatically would know when I'm working out. And then a week later it showed up. I'd be like, what? Really? Right. I did that? And they listened? That's amazing. So a lot of gratitude there. And that's what we get to do.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Okay. We can keep going, obviously, with this. And it's been an amazing conversation. I get to catch up with you, which is always amazing. But how can people reach you?
Well, you can reach me on LinkedIn always. There you go. Deena Bernstein, LinkedIn. Become my friend. I'd love to meet you, as well as my email. I think there you go. You can reach me by email. Love to hear any feedback based on this conversation, or if you have any questions. And if you want to know a little bit about Darshan, I could tell you a few things.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. Very concerning. Just to be clear, Deena has been pushing a river cruise recently, so that should be interesting.
Shout out to some of our friends out there in local research land.
I will actively consider this. It was great talking to you. Thank you again, Deena.
Thank you for having me. Talk soon.